Manhattan was chaos at dusk. Honking horns, hurried footsteps, and roaring engines echoed through the crowded streets. As the city rushed to meet its obligations, Ava Johnson, 26 years old, was used to the frenetic rhythm of the metropolis. With her hair tied back and a messy bun and a bag full of design sketches, unfulfilled dreams, she walked home lost in her thoughts. It was an ordinary day, but life. Love's surprises at the intersection of one of the busiest avenues. The pedestrian light turned red. Ava stopped, watching the crowd gather around her, some impatient, others distracted by their phones. However, one solitary figure caught her attention, a tall, sharply dressed man, wearing a suit so impeccable it seemed out of place amidst the chaos, was walking straight into the crosswalk. He didn't appear to notice the light or the oncoming cars. In one hand, he held a cell phone, his eyes glued to the screen, and in the other, a leather briefcase. It was as if he were in a parallel universe, immune to the danger around him. Ava frowned, her instincts screaming for her to act. Then she heard it, the shrill blare of a taxi horn. Her eyes widened as she saw the car speeding toward him. He was seconds away from being hit. Without a second thought, Eva dropped her bag to the ground and sprinted toward him. The sound of the taxi grew deafening, but she ignored her fear in one swift, desperate motion. She grabbed his arm and yanked him back with all her strength. They both tumbled onto the sidewalk with a hard thud as the taxi zoomed past, missing him by mere inches. For a moment, everything went silent. Ava could feel her heart pounding in her chest, her entire body trembling with adrenaline. The man lay beside her, breathing heavily, his eyes wide with shock. "Are you okay?" she asked, still catching her breath. He blinked a few times before finally focusing on her. His blue eyes were intense, but there was a trace of vulnerability in them. Yes, I think so," he replied, his voice horror and uncertain. What happened?" Ava stood up slowly, extending a hand to help him. "You almost became a taxi hood ornament. That's what happened. Didn't you see the light?" He took her hand, still a bit dazed. Once he was on his feet, he adjusted his suit jacket and looked at her with a mix of gratitude and confusion. I was distracted. You saved me. You can thank me by looking both ways next time," Ava replied, her tone sharp as she tried to mask her lingering nerves. He managed a small smile, but still seemed shaken. Then, as if something clicked in his mind, he asked, "What's your name?" Ava hesitated, finding the question odd. "Ava, and yours?" He paused for a moment before answering. "Nicholas Carter." Ava froze. That name was far too familiar. In fact, it was a name anyone in Manhattan would recognize. Nicholas Carter was CEO of Carter Enterprises, one of the richest and most influential men in the country. "Wait, you're the Nicholas Carter?" she asked, disbelief written all over her face. He nodded slowly, his gaze locked on her. "Yes, and now I owe you." She let out a short laugh, still struggling to process what had just happened. "You don't owe me anything, just be more careful. Mr. Carter, good luck with your fortune and all that." Picking up her bag from the ground, Ava turned to leave, but she felt a light touch on her arm. When she looked back, Nicholas was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. "Please let me repay you. You saved my life." Ava shook her head, clearly uncomfortable. "I just did what anyone would do." "No." His response was immediate, almost too firm. "Trust me, most people wouldn't have done what you did." She shrunk. "Then maybe you need to meet better people." With that, she walked away, leaving Nicholas standing there on the sidewalk, still trying to comprehend what had just happened. He knew he wouldn't be able to forget that moment, or the woman who had risked her own life to save his. Ava, on the other hand, thought she would never cross paths with him again. But life has a peculiar way of bringing people together. The days following her daring rescue passed in a blur for Ava. She threw herself into her job at a small design studio, trying to forget the strange encounter with Nicholas Carter. It wasn't every day that someone saved the life of a billionaire, but Ava figured their paths would never cross again. People like Nicholas Carter didn't have time for ordinary women like her. At least that's what she thought. Nicholas sat in his corner office, the Manhattan skyline sprawling out behind him, but for once he wasn't focused on the cokes and figures stacked neatly on his desk. His mind kept drifting back to the woman who had pulled him from death's grip. Ava. There was something about her fearlessness, her sharp wit, the way she'd walked away without expecting anything in return. It intrigued him in a way he hadn't felt in years. He picked up his phone, hesitated for a moment, then dialed "Find out everything you can about a woman named Ava Johnson," he instructed his assistant, his voice as calm and commanding as ever. 3 days later, Ava was heading home after another exhausting day. She stepped into her small apartment, kicked off her shoes, and froze when she noticed a sleek black envelope sitting on her coffee table. Her roommate Ellie poked her head out of the kitchen. "Oh hey, that was delivered for you earlier. Fancy stuff. Are you secretly dating a billionaire?" Ellie teased, laughing. Ava rolled her eyes but couldn't ignore the odd knot forming in her stomach. She opened the envelope and pulled out an embossed card. The message was simple: "Baffling dinner Friday at 7:00 p.m. Carter Tower, Nicholas Carter." Ava stared at the card, her mind raced. Why would Nicholas Carter want to have dinner with her? She wasn't sure whether to feel flattered, suspicious, or downright terrified. Friday evening arrived faster than Ava would have liked. She stood outside Carter Tower, craning her neck to take in the sheer height of the building. Her nerves buzzed as she adjusted the modest black dress she borrowed from Ellie. She had no idea what to expect, but curiosity drove her forward. The receptionist greeted her with a warm smile and escorted her to the top floor. When the elevator doors opened, Ava found herself in a lavish dining room with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the glittering city lights. At the center of it all stood Nicholas, looking just as polished and intimidating as he had on the street that day. "Eva," he said, a rare smile playing on his lips, "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I wasn't sure either," she replied, folding her arms. "What's this about Mr. Carter? Are you planning to pay me back for pulling you out of traffic?" Nicholas chuckled, motioning for her to sit at the elegantly set table. "Please call me Nicholas, and no, this isn't about paying you back. I wanted to thank you properly. You didn't have to do what you did." Ava hesitated, but eventually took the seat across from him. The table was filled with gourmet dishes she couldn't even pronounce. As the dinner progressed, Nicholas asked her about her life, her work, her dreams, her struggles. She was hesitant at first, but his genuine curiosity put her at ease. "I have to admit," Nicholas said, leaning back in his chair, "I've never met anyone like you." Ava raised an eyebrow. "Is that a compliment or an insult?" He laughed, a sound she hadn't expected to hear from someone so serious. "A compliment," he said, his tone softening. "You're refreshingly real." Ava wasn't sure how to respond to that. She felt a strange warmth spread through her chest, but she quickly pushed it aside. This was just dinner, nothing more. Or so she told herself as Ava left Carter Tower that night. Her thoughts were a whirlwind. Nicholas Carter wasn't at all what she'd expected. Beneath his billionaire exterior, there was a man who seemed genuinely intrigued by her. But why, and what could a man like him possibly want from someone like her? Nicholas meanwhile watched her leave from his office window. For the first time in years, he felt something he couldn't quite name. Ava Johnson was unlike anyone he'd ever met, and he was determined to find out why she had left such a profound mark on him. Little did they know their worlds were about to collide in ways neither of them could have anticipated. Ava woke up the next morning with the memory of her dinner with Nicholas Carter still fresh in her mind. It wasn't just the extravagant meal or the breathtaking view of Manhattan. It was him. For someone so powerful and wealthy, Nicholas had shown surprising moments of vulnerability. But Ava couldn't shake off the lingering question. Why her? What could he possibly see in her simple, messy life? Shaking her head, she decided to focus on her day. Nicholas Carter was a puzzle she wasn't ready to solve. Not yet. Nicholas, on the other hand, was already in his office at Carter Enterprises, reviewing a stack of reports. His assistant James entered with his usual efficiency, carrying a tablet. "Good morning, sir. The quarterly projections are ready for review, and your meeting with the board is scheduled for 11, James said before hesitating. "Oh, and there's one more thing." Nicholas raised an eyebrow. "What is it?" James handed him a sleek envelope. "This was delivered to your attention. It's an invitation to the upcoming charity gala. It's expected you'll bring a guest." Nicholas glanced at the invitation, then set it aside. "I don't have time for those events," he muttered, focusing back on the reports. James cleared his throat. "With all due respect, Mr. Carter, attending these galas strengthens the company's image. A guest would make a good impression." Nicholas didn't respond immediately. His mind wandered back to Ava, to her sharp wit and fearless demeanor. A small smile tugged at the corner of his lips. "I'll think about it," he finally said, much to James's surprise that evening. As Ava walked into her apartment, she was greeted by Ellie holding up yet another sleek black envelope. "What is this?" Ava asked, her stomach twisting. "Another delivery from your billionaire friend." Elle's tossing it to her. Ava opened the envelope cautiously. Inside was a handwritten note. "Ava, would you do me the honor of accompanying me to the Carter Enterprises charity Gala this Saturday?" Nicholas. Below the note was a card for the event, along with a number to RSVP. Ava stared at it, her mind racing. A gala? She didn't belong in a room full of Manhattan's elite, rubbing shoulders with the and powerful, but the thought of saying no felt wrong. After all, she had saved his life. Maybe this was just his way of expressing gratitude. Saturday night arrived, and Ava found herself standing outside her building in a stunning navy blue dress. It was Ellie's idea, and the dress fit perfectly, accentuating her natural beauty without overdoing it. She felt nervous, out of place. But when a sleek black car pulled up in front of her, those thoughts quickly faded. Nicholas stepped out, dressed in a classic black tuxedo. His gaze lingered on her, and for a moment Ava thought she saw something more than admiration in his eyes. "You look incredible," he said, his voice lower than usual. "Thanks," Ava replied, trying to ignore the butterflies in her stomach. "You don't look too bad yourself." He offered her his arm, and she hesitated before taking it. As they entered the grand ballroom, Ava's breath caught. The room was dazzling, filled with glittering chandeliers, elegant decor, and people dressed in the finest designer clothing. Nicholas guided her through the crowd, introducing her to a few tea figures. Ava was polite, but felt like a fish out of water. However, Nicholas never left her side, his presence somehow grounding her amidst the chaos. Later in the evening, while the two stood by the balcony overlooking the city, Nicholas broke the silence. "You're handling all of this better than most people would," he said, sipping his champagne. Ava laughed softly. "I'm not sure if I'm handling it. I'm just trying not to embarrass myself." He turned to face her, his expression serious. "You don't need to impress anyone here, Ava. You're already extraordinary." She blinked, taken aback by the sincerity in his voice. Before she could respond, the sound of laughter and music from the ballroom brought them back to the moment. "I don't fit in here," Ava admitted, glancing at the glittering crowd behind them. Nicholas smiled. Neither do I." She looked at him, surprised. "You're Nicholas Carter. This is your world only because I built it," he said, his voice tinged with something she couldn't quite place. "But that doesn't mean I belong." The vulnerability in his words caught her off guard. For a brief moment, it felt like the world outside faded away, leaving just the two of them on that balcony. As the night wound down, Nicholas escorted Ava back to her apartment. Before she stepped inside, he hesitated. "Thank you for coming tonight," he said. "It meant more to me than you realize." Ava offered him a small smile. It was unexpected, but not terrible. He laughed softly, and for a moment neither of them moved. Finally, Ava turned and disappeared inside, leaving Nicholas standing there with a new realization forming in his mind. This wasn't just gratitude. What he felt for Ava was something deeper, something he hadn't felt in years. Ava woke up on Sunday morning, still replaying the events of the gala in her mind. It had been surreal, the elegance, the grandeur, and most of all, Nicholas. He wasn't at all what she had expected from a billionaire CEO. Beneath the polished exterior, there was a man who carried a weight she didn't yet understand. Burr to Ava. Ellie's voice broke her thoughts. Her roommate was standing in the doorway with a knowing smirk. "So spill it. How was your magical night with Manhattan's most eligible bachelor?" "It wasn't magical," A replied, sled rolling her eyes. "It was complicated." "Complicated how?" Ellie pressed, clopping down on Ava's bed. Ava hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "Hugh, not what I thought he'd be. He's human, but I don't know what he wants from me." "Ellie, it feels like there's something more, but I can't put my finger on it." "Well, maybe you'll find out soon," Ellie said, holding up A's phone. It buzzed with a message from Nicholas. "Would you join me for lunch today? There's something I'd like to share with you." Nicholas waited in a quiet corner of a chic Upper East Side bistro, a place far removed from the bustling boardrooms and grand events he usually frequented. When Ava walked in, he stood smiling faintly as she approached. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said as she sat down. "Neither was I," she admitted, glancing around. "So what's this about?" He hesitated for a moment. Before leaning back in his chair, I wanted to talk to you somewhere quieter. That sounds ominous, Ava teased, but her curiosity was piqued. Nicholas chuckled softly, his usual guarded demeanor giving way to something gentler. There's something you should know about me, Ava, something I don't share with many people. She raised an eyebrow, her interest growing. Okay, I'm listening. Nicholas took a deep breath, his eyes briefly dropping to his hands. I wasn't always this, the billionaire, the CEO, the man with everything. I came from nothing. Ava blinked, surprised. Your eyes, you, the Nicholas Carter I thought you were. Born into wealth, he shook his head. Far from it. My parents were immigrants. My father worked 3 jobs, and my mother took whatever work she could find. I grew up watching them struggle to make ends meet. It wasn't until I got a scholarship to college that things began to change. Ava leaned forward, captivated by his story. But you built Carter Enterprises. I did, he said, his voice softening, but the price of success was high. I lost people along the way, people I cared about. His eyes darkened, the weight of unspoken memories hanging between them. I didn't expect you to be so open, Ava said, her voice gentle. Neither did I, Nicholas admitted, meeting her gaze. But something about you, Ava, makes it easy to be honest. Ava felt her cheeks flush. She didn't know how to respond to that, so she changed the subject. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand me, he said simply. You've already seen a side of me most people never do. I thought you deserved the whole picture. Ava nodded, still processing everything he'd shared. You're more complex than I gave you credit for, Nicholas, and you're more intriguing than I expected. He countered, a faint smile tugging at his lips as they walked out of the bistro. Nicholas turned to her. There's one more thing, he said almost hesitantly. Next week, and I'm hosting a charity event at my estate in the Hamptons. It's a fundraiser for underprivileged students, a cause close to my heart. I'd like you to come. Ava froze. Me at your estate? That sounds intimidating. I think you'll find it's not as intimidating as you imagine, he said, his tone reassuring. Will you think about it? She sighed, her mind racing. I'll think about it. Nicholas smiled. That's all I ask. That evening, Ava found herself staring at the invitation Nicholas had handed her. Ellie, as usual, hovered near by, full of enthusiasm. You have to go, Ellie said, practically bouncing. This is huge. Ava, Hune's clearly interested in you. I don't know what he wants, Eva replied, her voice uncertain. But I'll admit there's something about him, something real. Exactly. And you might not get another chance to figure it out. Ava sighed, knowing Ellie was right. She couldn't deny the pull she felt toward Nicholas, even if it terrified her. Okay, she said finally. I'll go. The week passed in a whirlwind for Ava, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the invitation. Nicholas had extended the idea of spending a weekend at his estate in the Hamptons. Both excited and terrified her. It wasn't just the grandeur of the event, it was what it represented. Nicholas was pulling her deeper into his world, a place she wasn't sure she belonged. By Friday, her resolve had solidified. She decided she couldn't let fear hold her back. If Nicholas Carter saw something in her worth inviting into his life, maybe it was time. She started seeing it too. Saturday morning arrived, and Ava found herself in a sleek black car, speeding toward the Hampton. Nicholas had insisted on sending a car for her, and despite her initial protests, she was grateful as the car turned onto a long winding driveway lined with immaculate gardens. Eva's breath caught. The Carter estate was breathtaking, an architectural masterpiece nestled against the backdrop of the Atlantic Ocean. Nicholas was waiting for her at the grand entrance ramps. He was dressed casually in tailored slacks and a crisp white shirt, a far cry from the polished suits she was used to seeing him in. His smile was warm as he approached her. You made it, he said, offering his hand to help her out of the car. Ava smiled nervously. I almost didn't. This is overwhelming. You'll fit right in, he reassured her. Come on, let me show you around. Nicholas led her through the estate, pointing out the sprawling gardens, the infinity pool overlooking the ocean, and the ornate ballroom where the fundraiser would take place. Eva couldn't help but feel like she'd stepped into another world as they walked. Nicholas seemed more relaxed than she'd ever seen him. He told her stories about growing up with nothing, how he'd always dreamed of creating a life where he'd never have to struggle again. But there was a wistfulness in his voice, a hint of the sacrifices he'd made along the way. You're the first person I brought here who isn't part of this world, he admitted as they stood on the edge of the pool, the ocean breeze ruffling their hair. Ava looked at him, surprised. Why me? Nicholas met her gaze, his expression unreadable. Because you see me differently. You're not impressed by the money or the power. You see the man behind all of it. She didn't know what to say to that. Instead, she looked out at the ocean, trying to steady the flurry of emotions. His words had stirred the fundraiser. That evening was nothing short of spectacular. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, and the room was filled with Manhattan's elite. Eva felt out of place in her borrowed gown, but Nicholas stayed by her side, introducing her to key figures and ensuring she felt comfortable. As the evening progressed, Ava began to relax. She even found herself laughing at some of Nicholas's witty remarks as they navigated the crowd together. But just as she was starting to enjoy herself, a light-dressed woman approached them. "Nick," the woman said, her voice smooth and confident. "It's been a while." Nicholas's expression hardened slightly. "Hello, Victoria." Ava's heart sank as she watched the exchange. Victoria was stunning, with a designer dress that screamed wealth and a smile that hinted at familiarity with Nicholas. "And who's this?" Victoria asked, her eyes flicking to Ava with thinly veiled curiosity. "This is Ava," Nicholas said firmly, his tone leaving no room for doubt. "A guest." Victoria arched a perfectly manicured eyebrow, but didn't press further. Instead, she gave Ava a cool smile. "Well, Ava, I hope you're enjoying yourself. It's not every day someone gets to experience this level of luxury." Eva forced a polite smile, but the encounter left her feeling out of place all over again. Nicholas noticed her discomfort and gently placed a hand on her arm. "Don't let her get to you," he said softly. "Victoria thrives on making people feel small." Ava nodded, grateful for his reassurance. The encounter stayed with her later that night. After the guests had left, Nicholas found Ava sitting by the pool, staring at the moonlit ocean. He sat beside her, silent for a moment before speaking. "I'm sorry about Victoria," he said. "She's complicated." "Do you have a lot of complicated people in your life?" Eva asked, her tone lighter than she felt. Nicholas chuckled softly. "More than I'd like to admit. But tonight wasn't about her. It was about the students we're helping and about sharing this part of my life with you." Ava turned to him, her expression softening. "Why is that so important to you?" He hesitated before answering. "Because you've reminded me what it feels like to be grounded, to be real. I don't want to lose that." Ava felt her heart skip a beat. There was something in his voice, something raw and honest, that made her chest tighten. "You're not as untouchable as you look, Nicholas Carter," she said softly. He smiled, a genuine, almost vulnerable smile. "Not when I'm around you." The moment lingered, the two of them sitting in silence as the waves crashed in the distance. For the first time in years, Nicholas felt like he didn't have to wear a mask, and for Ava the lines between their worlds began to blur in a way she hadn't thought possible. The days after the fundraiser were unusually quiet. Ava returned to her routine at the design studio, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Nicholas and the night at the Hamptons. Something about the way he had opened up to her lingered in her mind. She tried to shake it off, telling herself that she was reading too much into things. After all, Nicholas Carter was way out of her league. Nicholas, on the other hand, found himself more distracted than ever. The image of Ava sitting by the pool, her laughter ringing softly in the night air, had etched itself into his memory for the first time years. His carefully constructed world of deals and power felt incomplete. He didn't just want Ava in his life, he needed her there. It was Thursday afternoon when Ava's phone buzzed with an unexpected message. "I need your help. Carter Enterprises 500 p.m." Nicholas. Ava stared at the message, her heart pounding. What could Nicholas possibly need her help with? She debated ignoring it, but decided against it. Whatever this was, it felt important. Arriving at Carter Enterprises, Ava felt the weight of the towering skyscraper loom over her. She'd never stepped foot inside the building, and now, walking through its polished marble lobby, she felt like an intruder in someone else's world. Nicholas was waiting for her in his office, a vast space with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of Manhattan. He looked up from his desk as she entered, his face lighting up in a way that made her heart skip a beat. "Ava," he said, standing. "Thank you for coming. You sounded urgent," she said, crossing her arms. "What's going on?" Nicholas motioned for her to sit, his expression unusually tense. "I need your perspective. I've been working on a charity initiative for underprivileged students, scholarships, mentorship programs, the works, but the board thinks It's a waste of resources, Ava blinked, taken aback. You brought me here for business advice. He smiled faintly. Not exactly. I want to hear your honest opinion. Does this sound like something worth fighting for? Her surprise melted into admiration. This wasn't the Nicholas Carter the world knew, the ruthless CEO or the untouchable billionaire. This was a man who cared deeply about making a difference. Of course it's worth fighting for, she said, her voice firm. You know what it's like to struggle, Nicholas. You have the chance to change lives. Don't let them talk you out of it. Nicholas exhaled, the tension in his shoulders easing. That's exactly what I needed to hear. Ava smiled softly. Sometimes you just need someone to remind you why you started. As the evening wore on, Nicholas insisted on taking Ava to dinner as a thank you. They found themselves in a cozy Italian restaurant, tucked away in a quiet corner of the city. The ambience was warm and intimate, a stark contrast to the opulence of the Gala. Over glasses of wine and plates of pasta, their conversation flowed effortlessly. Nicholas shared stories of his early days, the challenges of building his empire, and the mistakes he'd made along the way. Ava, in turn, opened up about her dreams of becoming a designer, the struggles of working 2 jobs to make ends meet, and the pressure of proving herself. You're more resilient than anyone I've ever met, Nicholas said, his tone sincere. Ava laughed lightly, coming from the great Nicholas Carter. That's quite the compliment. He smiled, but there was a flicker of something deeper in his eyes. You don't realize how extraordinary you are, do you? The intensity of his gaze made Ava's breath hitch. She looked away, trying to steel herself. I think you're giving me too much credit. Not at all, he said softly. You've done more for me in the short time I've known you than most people have in years. As they walked out of the restaurant, the cool night air wrapped around them. Nicholas glanced at Ava, his expression unreadable. There's something I need to ask you, he said, his voice low. Ava's stomach tightened. What is it? Why did you save me that day? He asked, stopping in his tracks. You did know who I was. You could have walked away, but you didn't. Why? She looked at him, surprised by the vulnerability in his question. Because it was the right thing to do. I couldn't just stand there and watch you get hurt. Nicholas nodded slowly, his jaw tightening. That moment, it changed everything for me. It made me realize how much of my life I've been living on autopilot. You woke me up, Ava. She didn't know what to say. The weight of his words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Before she could respond, Nicholas smiled faintly. Let me walk you home, he said, his tone lighter. Ava nodded, grateful for the change in atmosphere, but as they walked through the quiet streets, she couldn't shake the feeling that Nicholas Carter was far more complicated and far more vulnerable than she'd ever imagined. Ava spent the next few days trying to process everything Nicholas had said to her. His words lingered in her mind, and the intensity of his gaze haunted her thoughts. She told herself she was imagining things, that Nicholas Carter couldn't possibly see her as anything more than a friend, or perhaps just a good deed in his otherwise calculated life. But every time her phone buzzed with a message from him, her heart betrayed her logic. By Friday evening, Nicholas had invited her to see Enterprises for a private event. It wasn't another gala or fundraiser. It was the unveiling of his new scholarship initiative. He had insisted she attend, calling her one of the reasons he pushed the project forward. When Ava arrived, she was met by a warm smile from Nicholas, who stood by the entrance of the company's grand auditorium. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored navy suit, but there was an unusual softness in his demeanor. I'm glad you're here, he said, his voice steady but tinged with something unspoken. You didn't give me much of a choice, Ava teased, though her smile was genuine. I'm proud of you, Nicholas. This is a big deal. It's not just me, he replied, his eyes locking onto hers. You inspired this. Before Ava could respond, an assistant appeared to inform Nicholas that the event was about to begin. He excused himself, leaving Ava to find a seat among the small crowd of attendees. Presentation was breathtaking. Nicholas spoke with a sincerity that captivated everyone in the room. He shared stories of his upbringing, his struggles, and his drive to give others the opportunities he had fought so hard for. Ava couldn't help but feel a swell of admiration for the man who had once seemed so untouchable. When the applause died down, Nicholas made his way directly to Ava. What did you think? He asked, his voice low but eager. I think you just changed a lot of lives, Ava replied, her smile warm. You were incredible for a moment. Nicholas looked as though he wanted to say more, but before he could, another group of people approached to congratulate him. Gavia stepped aside, letting him bask in the success of the evening. As the event wound down, Nicholas found Ava standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. The view was stunning, but his attention was solely on her. Enjoying the view, he asked, stepping beside her. "It's beautiful," Ava said, turning to him, "but I think the real view tonight was seeing you up there pouring your heart out." Nicholas chuckled softly. "You make it sound more dramatic than it was." "I'm serious, Nicholas. You showed everyone the man behind the suit. That's not easy." He studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "You always manage to see right through me, don't you?" "Maybe," she said with a playful shrug, "but you make it pretty easy." Nicholas took a deep breath, his demeanor shifting. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you." Her heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" Before he could answer, the sound of hurried footsteps interrupted them. Nicholas's assistant, James, appeared, looking apologetic. "Mr. Carter, you're needed in the conference room. It's urgent." Nicholas sighed, his jaw tightened. "I'll be right there." He turned back to Ava, his gaze softening. "Can I see you tomorrow? There's something I need to say." Ava nodded, though her curiosity burned. "Sure." As Nicholas walked away, Ava couldn't help but wonder what was weighing so heavily on him. The next day, Ava found herself waiting for Nicholas at a quiet cafe. He had suggested the anticipation was enough to make her fidget, and when he finally arrived, she could sense the tension in his posture. "Sorry to keep you waiting," he said, sitting across from her. "No problem," she replied, studying his expression. "You seem distracted." Nicholas hesitated, his fingers tapping the edge of the table. "There's something I need to confess." "Ava, something I should have told you sooner." Her stomach tightened. "Okay." He looked directly at her, his voice steady, but laced with vulnerability. "The day we met, the day you saved me, I wasn't just distracted. I was coming from a meeting that could have destroyed everything I've built, my company, my reputation. It was all at risk." Ava blinked, unsure of where he was going with this. "I was so lost in my thoughts, so caught up in my failures, that I didn't even see the car coming. You didn't just save my life, Ava, you pulled me out of a downward spiral I didn't even realize I was in." She stared at him, her chest tightening. "Nicholas, you don't owe me anything," he said, quickly cutting her off. "I just needed you to know you've been the one constant since that day, the one person who makes me feel like I can be." My Ava felt her cheeks flush. She didn't know what to say, but the wrong honesty in his voice left her breathless. Nicholas reached for her hand across the table, his touch light but firm. "I know this is sudden, and I don't expect you to feel the same, but I had to tell you." Eva looked at him, her heart pounding. She hadn't expected this, any of it. But as she stared into his eyes, she realized something. Nicholas Carter, for all his wealth and power, was just a man searching for something real. And in that moment, she wasn't sure who had saved whom. The cafe was quieter than Ava expected for a Saturday morning. The clinking of cups and soft hum of conversation barely registered as she sat across from Nicholas, his last words still hanging in the air. "I had to tell you," Nicholas repeated, his voice softer now, but still carrying the weight of his confession. Ava took a deep breath, her heart racing. "Nicholas, I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied, his gaze unwavering. "I just needed you to understand why you mean so much to me." She looked down at their hands, her fingers lightly brushing his. "This is all a lot. I wasn't expecting any of this." Nicholas nodded, leaning back slightly to give her space. "I know it's overwhelming. If you need time, take it. I'm not going anywhere." His words settled something within her, and for the first time Ava felt the barriers she'd built around herself begin to crack. But before she could respond, her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, and round its work, she said apologetically, "They need me to come in." Nicholas's expression didn't falter, though a hint of disappointment flashed in his eyes. "Of course, let me take care of the bill." "No, you don't have to," she started, but he raised a hand, cutting her off with a gentle smile. "Let me, it's the least I can do." Ava nodded, feeling a pang of guilt for leaving so abruptly. "Thank you, Nicholas, for everything." As she turned to leave, she felt his eyes on her, a silent promise lingering in the air between them. The day passed in a blur for Ava. Her work at the design studio, which usually gave her a sense of focus, felt distant. All she could think about was Nicholas, his confession, the raw honesty in his voice, and the way he looked at her, as though she were the only thing grounding him. By the time she returned home, the sun had dipped below the horizon. Painting the city in hues of orange and pink, Ellie was lounging on the couch, flipping through a magazine. But she sat up when Ava walked in. "You look distracted," Ellie said, narrowing her eyes, spilling. Ava dropping her bag on the kitchen counter. "Nicholas told me something today, something big." Ellie's eyebrows shot up like big. Ava nodded, recounting the conversation in the cafe. When she finished, Ellie leaned back, her expression thoughtful. "So he basically said you're his anchor," Ellie summarized. "And now you're freaking out," pretty much, Eve admitted, sinking into the chair across from her roommate. "What do I do, Ellie? This isn't some fairy tale. This is real life, and Nicholas Carter is Nicholas Carter." Ellie leaned forward, her tone serious. "Do you like him?" A hesitated, but the answer was clear in her heart. "Yes, I do." "Then stop overthinking it," Ellie said simply. "Hugh's putting himself out there. Ava, maybe it's time you do the same." The next morning, Ava found herself dialing Nicholas's number before she could second-guess herself. He answered on the second ring. "Ava," he said, his voice lighting up. "This is a pleasant surprise. Are you busy?" she asked, fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. "I was wondering if you'd like to take a walk or something." Nicholas didn't hesitate. "Give me 20 minutes." They met in Central Park, the crisp autumn air carrying the scent of fallen leaves. Nicholas was dressed casually, his usual suit replaced with a dark coat and scarf. Ava felt her nerves ease slightly as he approached, his smile warm and genuine. "Thanks for meeting me," she said as they began walking along a winding path. "Thank you for calling," he replied. "I wasn't sure I'd hear from you so soon." Eva looked at him, her heart pounding. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday, about how much that day changed things for you." And Nicholas prompted gently. "And it changed things for me too," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't realize it at the time, but meeting you, it made me rethink everything I thought I knew about people like you." Nicholas stopped, turning to face her. "People like me? You're not just a billionaire, Nicholas. That you're a person, a complicated, sometimes infuriating person, but still someone worth knowing." He chuckled softly, his eyes glinting with amusement. "I think that's the nicest insult I've ever received." Ava laughed, the tension between them dissolved. "And I'm serious. You've shown me a side of yourself that no one else gets to see, and it's incredible." Nicholas's expression softened, and he reached out to take her hand. "You've done the same for me, Ava. I've spent years hiding behind a mask, but with you I don't need it." The sincerity in his voice left her breathless. Before she could respond, Nicholas leaned in slightly, his gaze searching hers. "May I?" he asked, his voice low. Ava's heart raced, but she nodded, her eyes fluttering. Closed as Nicholas closed the distance between them, his lips brushed hers gently at first, then deepened into something more, something that felt like a promise. When they finally pulled apart, Ava couldn't help but smile. "That wasn't what I was expecting." Nicholas grinned, his thumb brushing her cheek. "Neither was this entire week, but I'm not complaining." They continued their walk hand in hand, the world around them fading into the background. For the first time, Ava let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't as impossible as she thought. The days following their kiss were surreal for Ava. She found herself smiling at odd moments, her mind replaying their time together in Central Park. Nicholas Carter, the untouchable billionaire, had shown her a side of himself that no one else had. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Nicholas, too, felt a shift in his world. For the first time in years, he found himself distracted at work, his mind constantly drifting to Ava. She wasn't like anyone he had ever met, grounded, authentic, and utterly captivating. He knew he was falling for her, but thought brought with it a mix of excitement and fear. Could someone like him, with his complicated past and high-stakes life, truly build something real with someone like Ava? By Friday evening, Nicholas decided to take a bold step. He invited Ava to a dinner at his penthouse, wanting to create a space where they could talk without interruptions or the weight of the outside world. Ava hesitated at first. Curiosity and her growing feelings won out when she arrived. Nicholas greeted her at the door with his usual charm, dressed casually in a dark sweater and slacks. The penthouse was stunning, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of the city. But Ava barely noticed the grandeur. Her focus was entirely on him. "This is intimidating," she admitted, her voice light but Honest Nicholas smiled. It's just dinner, no boardrooms, no fundraisers, just us. He led her to a beautifully set table by the window where the soft glow of candlelight cast a warm ambience. The meal was simple yet elegant, and as they ate, their conversation flowed easily. They talked about everything from their childhoods to their dreams, and even their fears. I have something I need to ask you, Nicholas said, setting down his fork. His tone had shifted, becoming more serious. Oz's heart skipped a beat. What is it? Nicholas hesitated for a moment before speaking. How do you feel about us? A blinked, taken aback by his directness. Us, he nodded, his gaze steady. I know this hasn't been conventional, but I can't ignore how I feel about you. I want to see where this goes. Ava, if you feel the same. Her cheeks flushed, but she didn't look away. I do, but Nicholas prompted, leaning forward slightly. This is a lot. Nicholas, your world, your life. It's overwhelming, and part of me wonders if I'm ready for it. Nicholas reached across the table, taking her hand in his. You don't have to be ready for all of it. Just be here with me. That's all I'm asking. Ava felt her chest tighten at the sincerity in his voice. Okay, she said softly. I'm here. The evening was perfect. But as Ava prepared to leave, Nicholas's phone buzzed insistently. He frowned as he glanced at the screen, his expression darkening. Is everything okay? Ava asked, concerned. It's work, he said, his tone clipped. There's a situation I need to handle. Ava nodded, sensing his tension. I'll let you go. Thank you for tonight, Nicholas. He walked her to the door, hesitating before pulling her into a gentle embrace. Thank you for being here, he said softly. I'll call you tomorrow. Ava smiled, though a part of her couldn't shake the feeling that something was weighing heavily on him. The next day, Ava went about her routine, trying not to overthink the shift in Nicholas's demeanor. But as the hours passed with no word from him, her worry grew. By evening, she decided to text him. Hey, hope everything's okay. Let me know if you need anything. To her surprise, the reply came almost immediately. Can you come by the penthouse? I need to talk to you. Eva's stomach twisted with nerves, but she didn't hesitate. Something about his message felt urgent. When she arrived, Nicholas was waiting for her in the living room, expression somber. He looked tired, as though he hadn't slept. Ava, he said, standing as she entered. Thank you for coming. Of course. What's going on? She asked, her voice filled with concern. Nicholas gestured for her to sit, his hands fidgeting, a rare sight for someone usually so composed. There's something I need to tell you, he began, something that might change how you see me. Oz's heart sank. Nicholas, you're scaring me. He took a deep breath. The day you saved me, that wasn't just a random accident. Someone was following me, someone who wanted to hurt me. What? Ava asked, her eyes widening. Why? Nicholas hesitated before answering. It's business. I've made enemies over the years, people who don't like how I've conducted myself or the deals I've made. I thought it was under control, but that day it almost cost me everything. Ava stared at him, trying to process what he was saying. Are you in danger now? I don't think so, Nicholas said quickly. I've taken precautions, but I needed you to know the truth. That day wasn't just fate, it was you saving me from a much darker reality. Ava felt a chill run through her. Why are you telling me this now? Because I don't want secrets between us, Nicholas said, his voice steady. If we're going to move forward, you deserve to know everything. Ava nodded, though her mind was spinning. This is a lot to take in. I know, Nicholas said softly. If you need space, I'll understand. Ava looked at him, her heart aching at the vulnerability in his eyes. I don't need space, Nicholas. I just need time to process this. Nicholas nodded, relief flickering across his face. Take all the time you need. I'll be here. Ava woke up the next morning with Nicholas's confession rep playing in her mind. The weight of his words had settled in overnight, leaving her feeling both intrigued and uneasy. Nicholas had always seemed untouchable, a man so in control that nothing could F him, but now she knew the truth beneath his polished exterior. He was a man navigating a dangerous and complicated world. She spent the day at the design studio, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts. Could she handle being a part of Nicholas's life, knowing the risks? Could she trust herself to navigate the complexities of his world? And most importantly, could she trust him? Nicholas, meanwhile, was grappling with his own turmoil. He had laid his truth bare before Ava, something he rarely did with anyone. He knew the risks of being honest, but he also knew that keeping her in the dark would only push her away. For the first time in years, he felt a pull stronger than his need for control, his need for Ava. That evening, Nicholas texted her dinner, my treat, I want to see you. Eva stared at the message for a long moment before replying okay, where Nicholas responded immediately, your choice. This time Eva smiled faintly and sent him the name of a small bistro in her neighborhood. She wanted a setting where she could feel grounded away from the opulence that Nicholas's life seemed to embody. The bistro was cozy with warm lighting and the aroma of fresh bread wafting through the air. Ava arrived first, choosing a table near the window when Nicholas walked in. Heads turned not because he was out of place, but because of the quiet confidence he exuded. He greeted Ava with a soft smile. This is perfect. I thought something might be nice, Ava replied as he sat across from her. Their conversation started light work, the weather and Nicholas's poor ability to navigate Manhattan's smaller streets, but as the meal progressed the air between them grew heavier with unspoken words. Nicholas, Ava began cautiously, about what you told me yesterday. He sat down, his attention fully on her. I'm listening, I'm trying to wrap my head around it. She admitted, your life, it's so different from mine. And now knowing what you're dealing with, I don't know where I fit in. Nicholas reached across the table, his hand covering hers. Ava, I don't need you to fit into my world. I need you to be a part of it. The real part, the part that reminds me why I'm doing all of this. She looked at him, her heart pounding. That sounds easier said than done. It won't be easy, Nicholas admitted, but I'm willing to fight for this for us. If you are hesitated, her mind racing. But when she looked into his eyes, she saw something she hadn't expected, hope. And it was that hope that gave her the courage to nod. I'm willing to try, she said softly. Nicholas's relief was palpable. He squeezed her hand gently. That's all I need. As they left the bistro, the cool night air wrapped around them. Nicholas offered Ava his coat, draping it over her shoulders with a care that made her heart ache. They walked in silence for a while, the city lights reflecting in the pee on the sidewalk. Nicholas, Ava said suddenly, breaking the quiet, what happened to the people who were after you? He stiffened slightly but kept his pace steady. They've been dealt with. My security team handled it. How she pressed her curiosity, mingling with unease. I'd rather not get into the details, Nicholas said, his voice careful, but I promise you it's under control. Ava nodded, though her mind was still spinning. She knew Nicholas was trying to protect her, but the shadows in his life seemed to loom larger now. Still, she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward him, the connection that defied logic. When they reached her apartment building, Nicholas turned to her, his expression serious. Thank you for tonight, he said. I needed this. So did I, Ava admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. For a moment they stood there, the city buzzing around them. Then Nicholas leaned in, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to her forehead. Good night, Ava, he said, his voice low and warm. Good night, Nicholas, she replied, watching as he walked away. As Ava climbed the stairs to her apartment, she felt a strange mix of emotions, hope, fear, and something that felt dangerously close to love. The following week brought a rhythm Ava hadn't expected. She and Nicholas exchanged texts and occasional phone calls, their conversations ranging from light-hearted banter to deeper, more personal topics. Despite the growing closeness, a lingering tension gnawed at Ava. Nicholas's confession about the dangers in his life weighed heavily on her, and she couldn't help but wonder what else he might be keeping from her. Nicholas, meanwhile, was doing his best to balance his demanding career with his growing feelings for Ava. She was a breath of fresh air, a reminder of everything real in a world that often felt superficial. But he also knew that his life wasn't simple, and every step closer to Ava brought with it a risk he wasn't sure he could fully control. By Friday, Nicholas invited Ava to spend the weekend at his estate in the Hamptons. Again, she hesitated, but his reassurance that it would be a quiet, relaxing escape won her over. He promised no grand events or overwhelming guests, just the two of them. When Ava arrived at the estate, she was greeted by Nicholas himself. His expression brightened the moment he saw her, and the tension she'd felt on the drive melted away. I'm glad you came, he said, taking her bag and leading her inside. I thought we could use some time away from everything. The estate was as stunning as Ava remembered, but the atmosphere felt different this time, more intimate, more personal. Nicholas led her to a cozy sitting room where a fire crackled in the hearth, and a simple but elegant dinner was waiting. As the evening wore on, their conversation flowed effortlessly. Ava found herself laughing at Nicholas's surprising dry humor and sharing stories from her childhood she hadn't thought about in years. But beneath the surface, a question burned in her mind. Nicholas, she began hesitantly, setting down her glass of wine. "Can I ask you something, anything?" he said, his gaze steady. "Why did you trust me with everything? Truth about your life, the risks you face. You barely knew me." Nicholas leaned back, his expression contemplative. "Because you saved me, Ava, not just physically that day. You saved me from myself. I was spiraling, losing sight of everything that mattered. And then you came into my life, completely unafraid to challenge me, to see me for who I really am." Ava's chest tightened. She wasn't used to hearing such raw honesty, especially from someone like Nicholas. "That's a lot of weight to put on one person." "It's not about weight," Nicholas said softly. "It's about trust, and I've never trusted anyone the way I trust you." The intimacy of his words between them and Ava felt a warmth spread through her chest. But before she could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. Nicholas frowned, rising to answer it. When he returned, his demeanor had shifted. The lightness in his expression was gone, replaced by a tension that immediately set Ava on edge. "What is it?" she asked, standing. "Nothing to worry about," he said quickly, though the tightness in his voice betrayed him. "It's just business." Ava crossed her arms. "Nicholas, don't do that. Don't shut me out." He hesitated, then sighed. "One of my security contacts brought me information about someone from my past. It's probably nothing, but I need to handle it." Ava's stomach twisted. "Is it dangerous?" "I won't let it be," he said, stepping closer to her. "Ava, I promised you I'd protect you. That hasn't changed." She looked into his eyes, searching for reassurance. "I don't need you to protect me from the truth, Nicholas. I just need you to let me in." Nicholas exhaled, his shoulders relaxing slightly. "I'll tell you everything, just not tonight." "Tonight is ours." Ava nodded, though a flicker of doubt lingered in her mind. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of laughter and quiet moments by the fire. But as Ava lay in bed that night, staring at the ornate ceiling, she couldn't shake the feeling that Nicholas was caring more than he was letting on. She wanted to trust him, but trust, she realized, was a fragile thing, easily given but just as easily broken. The next morning, Ava woke to the sound of birds chirping and the smell of fresh coffee wafting through the air. She found Nicholas in the kitchen, dressed casually in a sweater and jeans, his usual air of formality replaced with something far more relaxed. "Good morning," he said, smiling as he handed her a cup of coffee. "Sleep well?" "Mostly," Eva replied, taking the cup. "And you?" Nicholas hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Better than usual." They spent the day exploring the estate, walking along the beach and sharing quiet moments that felt almost surreal in their simplicity. But as the sun began to set, the peaceful atmosphere was interrupted by the sound of Nicholas's phone vibrating insistently. He checked the screen, his jaw tightening. "I need to take this," he said, his tone apologetic. "I won't be long." Ava nodded, watching as he stepped away to answer the call. She couldn't hear the words, but the tension in his posture spoke volumes. Whatever was happening, it wasn't nothing. When he returned, his expression was carefully composed, but Ava could see the cracks beneath the surface. "Is everything okay?" she asked. Nicholas forced a smile. "It will be." Ava didn't press him, but her concern deepened. Whatever was coming, she knew it would test not just Nicholas's world, but their growing bond as well. The quiet drive back to Manhattan from the Hamptons was filled with unspoken attention. Ava stared out the window, watching the trees blur into skyscrapers as Nicholas drove. He hadn't spoken much since his phone call the night before, and the weight of his silence pressed heavily on her. Whatever had happened, it was clear he was carrying it alone. As the city skyline came into view, Nicholas finally broke the silence. "Ava," he said softly, his hands gripping the steering wheel, "I'm sorry for being distant. I know it's not fair to you." She turned to him, her fr and gentle but firm. "You don't have to apologize, Nicholas, but you do need to let me in." Nicholas nodded, his jaw tightening as if preparing himself for a battle. "I'll explain everything. I just need to make sure you're ready to hear it." "I said without hesitation. "Whatever it is, I want to know." That evening, Nicholas invited Ava to his penthouse. The setting was different. This time no candle at dinners or light-hearted conversation. The air was heavy, the atmosphere charged With anticipation, Nicholas poured them both a glass of wine, but Ava barely touched hers. "Where do I even start?" he murmured, pacing near the floor to ceiling windows. "You already know that my life isn't simple. What I didn't tell you is how far some people are willing to go to see me fall." Ava's heart clenched. "This is about those people you mentioned before, isn't it? The ones who were after you?" Nicholas nodded, his expression grim. "Some of them are former business rivals, people I outmaneuver in deals. Others, let's just say, they have more personal grievances. One in particular has been resurfacing lately." "Hell?" Ava asked, her voice steady despite the unease creeping in. "Michael Caine," Nicholas said, his tone sharp. "He used to be a partner in one of my early ventures. Things went south when I discovered he was embezzling funds. I exposed him, and he lost everything. He blames me for his downfall. And now he's back." Eva asked, her stomach twisting. "Yes," Nicholas replied. "He's been trying to undermine me for months, spreading rumors, sabotaging deals, even sending threats. My security team has been monitoring him, but he's becoming bolder." A swallowed hard. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because I didn't want to drag you into it," Nicholas said, stepping closer. "You've already done so much for me, Ava. I didn't want you to feel like you had to carry this too." Ava stood, her resolve solidifying. "Nicholas, you don't have to protect me from the truth. If we're going to do this, really do this, you can't keep shutting me out." Nicholas stared at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of admiration and vulnerability. "You're right," he said finally. "I'll tell you everything over the next hour." Nicholas explained the full extent of Michael Caine's vendetta. It wasn't just about money or power. It was personal. Caine had made it his mission to tarnish Nicholas's reputation, even attempting to dig into his personal life. "So what does he want now?" Ava asked, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "He wants me to lose everything," Nicholas said bluntly. "And he's willing to play dirty to make it happen." Ava's mind raced, but one thought stood out. "Am I part of his plan?" Nicholas's expression darkened. "I don't think so, not yet. But that's why I need to keep you safe." Eva stepped closer, placing a hand on his arm. "Nicholas, I'm not afraid of him. I'm afraid of what keep secrets will do to us." Her words seemed to pierce through the walls he had built around himself. Nicholas reached for her hand, holding it tightly. "I don't deserve you, Ava. You don't get to decide that," she said with a small smile. "But if we're going to face this, we do it together. The next few days were a whirlwind." Nicholas's security team tightened their watch, and Ava found herself swept into a world of whispered warnings and cautious glances. Despite the attention, she and Nicholas grew closer. His openness, though reluctant at times, brought a new depth to their relationship. But Caine's shadow loomed larger with each passing day. One evening, as Ava left her design studio, she noticed a car idling across the street. At first, she dismissed it as coincidence, but when it followed her for several blocks, her pulse quickened. She ducked into a nearby cafe and called Nicholas. "There's a car following me," she said, her voice trembling. "Where are you?" Nicholas demanded, his tone sharp with concern. Ava gave him her location, and within minutes, one of Nicholas's security team members arrived to escort her to safety. When she finally saw Nicholas, his face was etched with worry. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," he said, pulling her into a tight embrace. Eva buried her face in his chest, her heart pounding. "I'm okay, but Nicholas, this is getting too close. I won't let anything happen to you," he vowed. T-cross a line. "And now I have to end this." The atmosphere in Nicholas's penthouse was tense. His security team was on high alert, and Nicholas had spent hours in his office strategizing his next move against Michael Caine. Ava could feel the weight of the situation, but she refused to back down. She wasn't going to let fear push her away, not when Nicholas needed her the most. That evening, Nicholas sat across from Ava in the living room, his expression heavy with concern. He reached for her hand, his touch both firm and gentle. "Ava, I don't know how much longer this will go on," he admitted, his voice low, "but I need you to know that I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe." Ava met his gaze, her own resolve unwavering. "I'm not going anywhere, Nicholas. We face this together." Her words seemed to ground him, and for a moment the tension in his shoulders eased. "You don't know how much that means to me." The next morning, Nicholas received a call from his head of security. Can had been spotted near one of Carter Enterprise's properties, and his actions were becoming more aggressive. Nicholas knew it was time to take control of the situation. "We need to confront him," Nicholas said, his tone firm as he addressed his security team. If we wait, he'll only escalate. Ava, who had been listening quietly, stepped forward. What does that mean? Confront him. How? Nicholas turned to her, his expression softening. I'll handle it. Ava, you don't need to be involved. No, she said firmly. If you're dealing with this, I want to be there. Nicholas hesitated, torn between his need to protect her and his respect for her strength. Finally, he nodded. Okay, but you stay close to me at all times. Later that evening, Nicholas and Ava arrived at one of his private offices, a space he rarely used, but had chosen for this meeting. Kane had agreed to come, though Nicholas suspected his motives were far from innocent. The tension in the room was palpable as Kane walked in. He was a man of striking confidence, his smirk laced with malice as his eyes darted between Nicholas and Ava. Well, Kane said, his voice dripping with mockery. Nicholas Carter, the golden boy, and his companion. Nicholas's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure. You've made your point, Kane. Now tell me what you want. What I want, Kane chuckled, leaning casually against the table. What I want is to see you fall, Nicholas, to strip away everything you've built and leave you with nothing. You've already tried, Nicholas said coldly. And you failed. Kane's smirk faltered for a moment before he regained his composure. Perhaps, but this time I'm not just targeting your empire. I'm targeting the people you care about. Nicholas stepped forward, his voice like steel. If you so much as look at her, I'll make sure you regret it. Ava's heart raced, but she refused to let fear show. She met Kane's gaze with unwavering defiance. You think you can scare us? All you're doing is showing how desperate you are. Kane's smirk faded entirely, replaced by a flash of anger. You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into, little girl. That's enough, Nicholas said sharply, his presence commanding the room. This ends now. Kane, walk away, or I'll make sure you can't come back for a moment. The detention was unbearable. Kane seemed to weigh his options, his eyes narrowing as he studied Nicholas. Finally, he straightened and gave a bitter laugh. This isn't over, Kane said, pointing a finger at Nicholas. You regret this? As he left, the air in the room seemed to shift. Nicholas exhaled, the weight of the confrontation still pressing on him. Back at the Penis, Nicholas sat silently, his head in his hands. Ava approached him, her heart aching at the sight of his vulnerability. You did what you had to do, she said gently, sitting beside him. Nicholas looked up at her, his eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and exhaustion. I don't know if it's enough. It is, Ava said firmly, because you're not fighting this alone anymore. Nicholas reached for her hand, his grip strong but tender. Ava, I don't deserve you. You don't get to decide that, she replied with a small smile. I'm here because I want to be. The moment stretched between them, the chaos of the evening fading into the background. Nicholas pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly as if grounding himself in her presence for the first time in days. He allowed himself to believe that they could make it through this together. The days following the confrontation with Kane were a mix of cautious relief and lingering tension. Nicholas had tightened his security measures, ensuring that Ava was never alone despite his reassurances. Ava could sense that Kane's threats weighed heavily on him. She wanted to believe that they were out of danger, but deep down, she knew this wasn't over. On a rare evening when the city seemed quieter than usual, Nicholas invited Ava to the rooftop garden of his penthouse. The view of Manhattan was breathtaking, the skyline shimmering like a sea of stars. A small table was set with candles and wine, and Nicholas greeted her with a soft smile as she stepped onto the terrace. This is beautiful, said, taking in the view. You deserve something beautiful, Nicholas replied, pulling out her chair. As they ate there, conversation drifted to lighter topics: childhood memories, dreams for the future, and the kind of life they each to build for. A while, the weight of their troubles seemed to fade, replaced by a sense of peace that neither of them had felt in weeks. You've changed my life, Ava, Nicholas said suddenly, his voice steady but filled with emotion. Before you, everything felt hollow, like I was just going through the motions. Ava looked at him, her chest tightening. You've changed mine too, Nicholas. I never thought someone like you could well see me. Nicholas reached across the table, taking her hand in his. I don't just see you, Ava. You're the only thing that feels real in my world. The sincerity in his voice left her breathless. For the first time, she let herself believe that what they had was more than fleeting connection. It was something worth fighting for. As the evening wore on, Nicholas walked Ava to her room. the warmth of the night wrapping around them like a cocoon at the door. He hesitated, his eyes searching her stay. He said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. Ava felt her heart skip a beat, but she didn't hesitate. Okay, they stepped inside, the city lights casting a soft glow. The windows. Nicholas pulled her into his arms, and for a moment they simply held each other, the weight of the world falling away. The next morning, A awoke to find Nicholas sitting by the window, a cup of coffee in his hands. His gaze was instant, his expression thoughtful. She sat up, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders. Penny, for your thoughts, she asked. Nicholas turned to her, his lips curving into a faint smile. Just thinking about what's next. And what's that? Ava prompted gently. I'm not sure, he admitted, but whatever it is, I want you by my side. Ava smiled, her heart swelling. I'm not going anywhere. Nicholas. Later that day, Nicholas received an unexpected call from his head of it. Can had been spotted again, this time meeting with someone known for their connections to underground networks. The news reignited the tension that had briefly subsided. Nicholas relayed the information to Ava, his tone sharp with concern. I don't want you leaving the penthouse until this is over. Ava frowned. Nicholas, I can't just hide while you're out there dealing with this alone. You're not hiding, he said firmly. You're staying safe. Eva crossed her arms, her determination matching his. And what about you? How safe are you? Nicholas sighed, running a hand through his hair. Ava, I've faced men like Cain before. I know how to handle this, and I know how to fight for the people I care about. She shot back. We're a team. Nicholas, don't shut me out. Her words seemed to cut through his frustration, and he nodded reluctantly. You're right, we'll face this together. That evening, Nicholas gathered his team to devise a plan. Eva sat by his side, absorbing every detail. She was no longer just an observer, she was a part of this fight, and she refused to let fear hold her back. As the meeting concluded, Nicholas turned to Ava, his expression softening. I'm sorry for trying to push you away. I just can't stand the thought of anything happening to you. Ava reached for his hand, her grip firm. We're stronger together. Nicholas, don't forget that as the sun set over the city, Nicholas and Ava stood on the penthouse balcony, the wind carrying the faint hum of Manhattan's energy. The horizon was painted in shades of orange and gold, a fleeting moment of beauty before the challenges ahead. Nicholas turned to Ava, his eyes filled with determination. Whatever happens next, we'll face it head-on together. Ava smiled, leaning into him as he wrapped an arm around her. Together for the first time in days, they felt a flicker of hope, a light in the shadows that threatened to consume them. The night was still, the silence outside Nicholas's penthouse interrupted only by the faint hum of the city below. But inside the tension was palpable. Nicholas had just received word that Michael Caine was planning a final move, audacious attempt to strike at the heart of Carter Enterprises. This wasn't just about business anymore, it was personal. Nicholas stood by the large windows, his gaze fixed on the skyline. Ava watched him from the couch, her heart heavy with concern. She knew what was coming, and she refused to let him face it alone. You don't have to do this, you know, Ava said softly, breaking the silence. Nicholas turned to her, his expression resolute. If I don't stop him now, he'll never stop coming after me, after us. Then I'm coming with you, Eva said, her voice steady. Ava, Nicholas began, but she cut him off. We in this together, remember, she said firmly. I'm not backing down now. Nicholas hesitated, his protective instincts wearing with his respect for her strength. Finally, he nodded. Stay close to me, no matter what happens. The plan was simple yet risky. Confront C at one of Carter Enterprises' warehouses, where he was rumored to be meeting with his accomplice. Nicholas's security team had already secured the perimeter, but the tension in the air was thick as they arrived. The warehouse was dimly lit, the shadows stretching across the cold concrete floor. Nicholas and Ava entered cautiously, flanked by two of his security guards. The sound of footsteps echoed through the space, each step amplifying the tension. Nicholas's voice rang out, commanding and sharp. It's over, show yourself. For a moment there was silence, then from the shadows Michael C. emerged, his smirk as cold as the air around them. Nicholas Carter. Caine drawled, his tone dripping with mockery. Come to play the hero, have you? This ends now. Nicholas said, his voice firm. Walk away, Caine, you've already lost. Caine chuckled darkly. You think this is about winning or losing? No. Nicholas, this is about making you feel what I felt losing everything. You did that to yourself, Nicholas retorted, and dragging innocent people into your mess won't change that kind's gaze shifted to Ava, his smirk widening. Ah, the girl I've heard so much about you. Nicholas stepped in front of Ava, his stance protective. Don't you dare relax, Kane said, holding up his hands mockingly. I wouldn't dream of hurting her, not yet anyway. The threat hung in the air, and Ava felt a chill run down her spine, but she refused to let Kane see her fear. You're pathetic, Ava said, her voice cutting through the tension, blaming Nicholas for your own fail. Yours, it's no wonder you've got nothing left. C's smirk faltered, replaced by a flash of anger. Careful, girl. You're playing a dangerous game. So are you, Nicholas said, his voice like steel. And it's time you lose. At Nicholas's signal, his security team moved in, surrounding Kane and his accomplices. Kane's bravado wavered as he realized he was outnumbered. You think this is the end? Kane spat, his voice venomous. Yauk, never be free of me. Nicholas stepped closer, his expression unyielding. I already am. The authorities arrived moments later, taking Kane and his accomplices into custody. As the tension in the room began to dissipate, Nicholas turned to Ava, his eyes filled with a mixture of relief and gratitude. Are you okay? He asked softly. Ava nodded, her heart still racing. I'm fine. Are you? Nicholas smiled faintly, the weight of the past few weeks finally lifting. I am now back at the penthouse. The quiet felt almost surreal. Ava and Nicholas sat on the balcony, the city lights twinkling like stars. The air between them was calm but charged with the unspoken emotions of the night. You didn't have to come to Nicholas said, breaking the silence. But I'm glad you did. I couldn't let you face him alone, Ava replied. We're a team, remember? Nicholas reached for her hand, his grip warm and steady. You're more than that, Ava. You're everything. Ava's breath hitched at the raw honesty in his voice. Nicholas, he turned to her, his gaze unwavering. I love you, Ava. I think I've loved you since the day you saved me. Tears pricked her eyes, but she smiled, her heart swelling. I love you too, Nicholas, even when you're infuriating. Nicholas laughed, softly pulling her into his arms. I'll take that they stayed like that, wrapped in each other's warmth. The chaos of the past, finally behind them. For the first time the future felt bright, a future they would face together. Months later, Nicholas's scholarship program had expanded, helping hundreds of underprivileged students achieve their dreams. Ava, now running her own design studio, felt her life intertwine with his in the most beautiful ways. They were partners in every sense of the word, they building a life filled with trust, love, and purpose. And as they stood on balcony one evening looking out at the city that had brought them together, Nicholas pulled Ava close and whispered, Thank you for saving me, Ava, in every way that matters. She smiled, her heartful. You saved me too, Nicholas. We loved having you here. Share in the comments what you thought of the story and how we can make it even better next time.